Welcome to the Hope of Being a Native American podcast, where we discuss focused topics within tribal housing and self-determination. I'm Melissa Atkins, the Training and Development Coordinator, and with me is Brooke Warrington, the Training and Development Specialist. Today on the show, we are excited to have Chantay Moore, Investment Advisor Representative for Transamerica Financial Advisor. In honor of National Life Insurance Month, we're going to have Chantay tell us some quick tips. Chantay, before we get started in today's conversation, can you go ahead and just please tell us a little bit about yourself to our viewers listening in?
Yes. Hi, Brooke, and hi, Whistler. Thank you so much for having me back on the podcast. So happy to be back. For those who don't know me, my name is Chantay Moore. I've been in the financial services industry almost 20 years. I've actually been insurance licensed for that same amount of time as well. So been doing this for a really long time. I own a company called Native American Financial Literacy Services. So we specialize in teaching financial education workshops and webinars for Native organizations and organizations that serve Native community members. Yeah, thank you all so much for having me back for today's important topic.
Absolutely. So first we want to ask, for our listeners in Indian country, why should they want to pursue getting life insurance? And like, how does that factor into somebody's overall financial plan for their lives?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I would say, a lot of folks right now, they want to be financially literate. They want to do better with their finances. They just don't know how to get there, what to focus on. Oftentimes, when we think of like a financial plan and saving money, investing money, they just think of, let me put money in the bank or let me put money in the stock market somewhere, and that's it. And to be honest, I would challenge that idea to say, no, you should actually be looking at being properly protected. And that's where we come under the umbrella of having proper insurance in place, not just life insurance, but health insurance, maybe disability insurance, but specifically life insurance. And the reason why is, I always tell folks, like a lot of times, like I specialize in working with middle America, folks who are just getting by, they're just working, they're just trying to do the best they can with their current finances. And oftentimes, that type of clientele wants to jump right into, let me just save and invest my money. And I always tell them, well, you could save that money. You could save a couple hundred, maybe even a couple $1,000s. But what if you pass away unexpectedly tomorrow? Then what? What does your family get? They use your savings, which probably might not be a lot. It might not be even enough to, even pay for final expenses. So life insurance is actually the foundation of any financial plan that you have. It starts there. I always tell folks, like, if you have a budget in mind of money that you do have available, the first thing you should be budgeting is to pay for proper protection, which is having a proper life insurance plan. That's literally the foundation of any good, solid financial strategy.
Thank you. And how would someone go apply for life insurance?
Yeah, so the first part is you want to find a really good insurance agent. So the insurance industry, it is a very highly regulated industry, and anyone who is, it's a transaction. You're buying a policy, just like we had to buy a car insurance policy or a homeowner's insurance, or even a policy for these cell phones that we have. You do need to find an agent to purchase a policy from. And I want to start with that because sometimes we get offers in the mail, like maybe from your bank or financial institution, and they'll offer you like a group term plan. And, I don't typically recommend those. You really want to go find someone who will talk to you, sit down one on one with you, and understand your financial situation. Um, who will educate you, who will share about the different types of life insurance there are, but also who will identify your insurable need. And that means like, how much life insurance do you need? Like, how much do you actually should you have? There is a way to kind of calculate that, but also someone who will present you with different options that fit within your budget. Like I mentioned, I do typically recommend avoid any plans that are offered to you through the mail, on the TV, on the internet. You really want to work with someone directly. The other thing is a lot of people will say, well, I have life insurance at work, through the job. isn't that enough? I would say no, it's often not enough. It's more often than not, even though it's free or pretty much a low cost, 9 times out of 10, it's still not enough to cover your full insurable need. But also, what if you lose that job? We've seen that happen a lot. If you are no longer employed somewhere, there goes your insurance as well. So I always believe in applying and qualifying for a policy that you own and maintain so that no matter where you work, you still have the proper coverage.
Awesome. That makes sense. Although it does seem more convenient to just pick up the one from the mailbox. But absolutely. So you mentioned you want to speak with somebody who's going to be able to walk you through the different types of insurance. Can you walk us through what some of those are, the different types available with life insurance?
Yeah, I wanted to touch on that because when we think of life insurance, a lot of folks don't understand there's actually a wide spectrum of different types. You have really only two types, and then you can kind of break it down from there. Any life insurance policy you're purchasing is either a term insurance policy, it's just for that, it's for a term, a period of time, or you have a permanent life insurance policy. And it's just that it's permanent. It's intended to last your entire lifetime. And real quickly, term insurance, it's very inexpensive. I love it because for someone who's just getting started, maybe you have a really small budget and but you need some protection in place. That's the really, really good type of insurance to look toward is getting a term life insurance policy. And then, as your income and cash flow change and you can afford a permanent policy, then go toward that. A permanent policy, they do last your entire lifetime, and because of that, they do cost more. I wouldn't say, and depending on how much of a death benefit you purchase will determine your costs along with your age and your health and background. But also, permanent life insurance gives you an opportunity to actually grow cash value inside the policy. So some people may have heard that maybe their grandmother had a policy that they were able to pull money from and take a loan out of. That's absolutely a feature of permanent life insurance. I would say with either type, whether you get term or permanent or maybe a combination of both, to also look for life insurance that have living benefits built into them. And that specifically means a lot of insurance carriers offer you extra benefits to where, a lot of times we think of life insurance of it's just if I die, it only, it only does something. Living benefits actually will pay you benefits like if you become critically, chronically, or terminally ill. So while you're still alive, you're actually able to access a portion of your death benefit, in the event of a diagnosis or some significant health matter. So yeah, there's two different types. And also, like how I mentioned, finding an agent to work with one-on-one. I would say if there's an agent out there who only talks about only one type of life insurance and it's only term or only permanent or only whole life or whatever, that's actually a red flag. You really want to work with someone who has access to the whole spectrum of different types of policies and who will educate you about all the options because otherwise they might be taking advantage of you or not actually giving you all the solutions that you have available to you. So something to just to be aware of. Understand that there are different types and you want to work with someone who will educate you about the different types of life insurance and who will present different options for you.
That's great. I also wanted to ask, do you feel like there's a certain like level somebody should get to before they pursue this? Because I have to be honest, in my mind, I always thought of life insurance as like rich people get that. You know, do you feel like life insurance is meant for like a certain like tax bracket, if you will, or is this something that really like everybody everyday person should be pursuing?
Yeah, I believe every person should have a life insurance policy, even our kids, your children. At the end of the day, what is insurance? It's to protect yourself. It's to protect your family from a possible loss of income or savings. And that's why we say you want to have that protection in place as you begin your financial journey. You just really have to think about your situation. So like for me, I'm a mother, I have 3 children. I am the primary breadwinner in my household. If something happens to me, that income is gone. It's completely gone. And so you really have to think, well, what can replace the money that I was bringing in? And that's a life insurance policy. My kids will still be able to stay in the same home and maintain the same lifestyle. And some people might say, well, Shantae, I'm single. I don't have any kids. Like, I don't have that typical responsibility. Well, then I would say, well, first of all, do you plan on getting married and having children or having a family? One, like, let's plan in advance for that. Secondly, if you have any debt, you want to have a policy to kind of pay that debt off so your family doesn't have to worry about that. But it's always still, even if you think of, well, I don't even care about anybody, think of a legacy. Um, like, is there a charity that you care about, an organization, your tribe? You can leave money behind to organizations. So I think it takes more than just thinking of this only benefits me if I actually die or pass away. And then, like someone in your situation, Brooke, there's policies where we can set them up to where not only do we have it, for life insurance first and foremost, which is the death protection, but like I mentioned, there's so many good strategies where you can accumulate cash, like tax free. You could pull it out tax free in the future. You can actually really grow pretty significantly if we do it right. So that's a way to have, like, we have multiple purposes with the policy, because yeah, I've met plenty of people who might have thought that, like, oh, I don't need that. And that's why it's important just to have a person who will really sit down and talk to you. Now, at the end of the day, if I show you all of these reasons and you still say no, at least at least you made an informed decision, because no one can force you to do this. But I think if you have a family, if you have loved ones that you care about, if you have relatives that you would like to leave a legacy behind before, then this is actually something that you do want to implement while you're young and while you're healthy and while you can still qualify for it. Because the number one thing is that you don't want to get to a situation in life where you get to a point because medically or there's some health issues and you can't even get life insurance at all. I've unfortunately had to have those conversations as well.
So since you mentioned that, coincidentally enough, the reason why I started thinking about life insurance lately, because I was very similar to Brooke. Like, we had very same mindset of like, well, I don't need life insurance, and that's not something I need to look into because, I'm 26. I don't need that. That's down the road when I'm like actually a mom and like I'm, down the road for sure. And then my dad had a critical life emergency, like a very big health scare. And that put my life into a huge perspective because, like you just said, immediately his first thing on his mind that when he was in the hospital was, how am I going to survive my bills? Like, how am I going to pay for everything? Like, once I lose my job, I lose my insurance. So, medically, what is going to be paid for? And I just remember thinking, like, oh man, like, I don't want to do that to my kids, and nor do I don't want my have like I want to be prepared. And if I'm in an emergency, I want to be able to focus on healing and not be stressed out and exerting all of this when, had I had a plan, I would have been prepared. So thank you for mentioning that. Like, there is a point where it could be too late to get it. And unfortunately, that was something that we started kind of encountering with my dad. And that inspired me to like, I need to get on it now. Um, Not to get too into it, but can you touch in just like a teensy bit on that? Like, what is that? What does too late look like?
Yeah, I would say, and first of all, thank you for sharing that story. And then that's a real situation, right? Like, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
folks, like, we deal with this stuff, whether it's you, it's a relative, it's someone who's kind of faced these scenarios. And if he had a policy that had living benefits, he wouldn't have to worry because the money would be there. But as far as like applying, so if you're really getting a good policy, and what I mean by good is a policy where they look at your situation, they really take a good look at your medical history, and they're really giving you a good cost-effective policy because the insurance company did this background check on you, and they got this information from you. So, and obviously, I mean, there's hundreds of life insurance companies, so I'm kind of speaking very, very broad. But typically, you want to find, if you're getting presented options, you really want the life insurance companies to be asking you questions. You want them to be asking you, like, okay, what is your job? What is your income? What is your medical background? Are you taking prescriptions? Are you a smoker or a non-smoker? That's actually a big part of the cost, how much the cost of your insurance would be dependent upon if you're a nicotine or a non-nicotine smoker, or if you don't smoke at all. Um, they sometimes insurance companies will ask, like I mentioned, like your occupation, because if you have a risky occupation, that's a risk to them. Sometimes they'll look at your driving history. They don't, most insurance companies do not like to see DUIs in the past year, 12 or 24 months. And, they'll look to see, like, okay, what prescriptions are you taking? Are there, any major medical diagnoses? And a lot of times, these questions are not asked to be intrusive. The questions are the insurance companies doing their due diligence, because at the end of the day, like, for example, one of my policies is a $500,000. If something happens to me, that insurance company is on the hook to writing a check for $500,000 to my beneficiaries. So they want to do their due diligence to make sure that you're disclosing information, that they have a good idea of who you are and your risk to them. Because at the end of the day, they know at some point this person will pass away. We just want to try and determine how quickly that might happen. And if you live like a risky lifestyle, or if you have, if you like jumping out of airplanes and scuba diving and racing cars, that's a little bit more risky to life insurance companies. But in general, as long as you're pretty healthy, and I would say even if you have a major medical diagnosis, like for example, diabetes, that's a pretty prevalent disease that a lot of folks deal with. Just because you have that doesn't mean you can't qualify for life insurance. The insurance companies just want to see that you're maintaining it, that you're taking your prescriptions, that you're going to the doctor, that you're following up on tests that that your doctor tells you to do. That's all they want to see, is that you're following doctor's orders. So, in some insurance companies, they might not get in depth. They could just be like, as long as you're not in a hospital right now and you're not on a like oxygen ventilator, we'll insure you. There are some insurance companies that don't, they have like guaranteed insurability. As long as you pay, and as long as you apply and pay, you'll get approved. They don't ask a lot of questions. That's typically for seniors who are older and maybe they want something in place. So there's just many variables when it comes to the application process. I don't want folks to be discouraged and thinking like, oh, I have this issue, not let me not even go and apply. No, you should definitely apply. I would say 9 times out of 10, you would be able to find coverage. And obviously, you also want to work with an agent who will find something within your budget, because you have to be able to afford it and maintain it. The last thing we want to happen is for you to sign up for a life insurance policy, get approved, you pay for it, and then something comes down the road and then you can't afford it anymore. Like, we don't want you to lose the policy. So a good agent will make sure that no matter what, your policy is affordable and something that you can maintain.
Thank you so much for saying all of that. It is just it really is so important to have life insurance. And like I said, my wake up call was literally like about 3 weeks ago. It was just very like, okay, like I need to be aware and I need to make myself aware. So once I get myself aware and I find an agent and I find the type of insurance I would like, what does that application process look like once I start filling it out?
Yeah, so I would say majority applications are actually done electronically. So if your agent will be able to send you an electronic application to sign, you typically can submit an application without submitting any money. If someone is pressuring you you need to put down money, I mean, that's kind of a caution, because most insurance companies can do what we call a trial application. Because at the end of the day, you all could be telling me, yeah, I'm healthy, I'm great, but then I don't know, I'm just taking your word and put it in the application. But the insurance companies, because they will typically you'll be signing a HIPAA authorization so they can check your medical records. They can kind of go behind the scenes and see what your doctors are saying about you, just to see if your answers, if the information they find matches up to the answers on your application. Um, and I've had people do that. They've completely misled me. They didn't disclose certain things, and I'm like, dude, you didn't have to do that. Just tell me the truth, because I would have went a different route had I known you had like sleep apnea or something, like something significant. So anyway, you'll submit your application will get submitted to the insurance company, and then they go through what's called an underwriting process. So that's when they look at your medical records. That can take, from a couple days to a couple weeks. It really depends. And then the insurance company will come back and give you an offer. They'll say, great, we reviewed your application. We're willing to offer you a policy for what you applied for and the amount that you applied for. Sometimes the insurance companies will say, you know what, we reviewed your application, but we found something, and so it'll cost a little more. Or then the best ones are when they were like, you know what, we actually found a lower price for you because we did that thorough background. And then at that point, you can make a decision to say, okay, great, I accept your offer. And then you submit your first month's premium, which is your monthly payment. And then your policy will be placed in force. So depending on the insurance company, I've had some where I've had a policy approved in like literally 4 days, and then some of them 4 weeks or longer. It really depends on the insurance company, but that's your typical process that you'll probably go through when you're submitting an application.
Thank you. That's super helpful. What would be like the ultimate benefit of coming to have a good life insurance plan?
Yeah, I would say, kind of like what you were saying. I remember me, I'll tell you a quick story about myself. So this was probably about 2016, 2017. I mentioned I'm a single mom, I have 3 children, and I remember having all of a sudden really bad chest pains, and it was really hard for me to breathe. And, beyond giving birth in the hospitals, I've never really been hospitalized, never had any issues. And I remember going to the emergency room. I'm there with my relatives. Doctors can't figure out anything. And I'm like freaking out, like things weren't getting any better. And I literally thought, you know what? This might be it. Like, Chantay, whatever this is, it's about to take you out. And for a moment in time, when I had that thought, I was like, well, at least my kids will become rich. I literally had that moment while I was in this emergency room thinking, like, if something happened to me, my kids would be okay. And that's what having proper life insurance protection is. It gives you peace of mind. Um, Ultimately, I had bad gas, which is what was the issue of what sent me to the emergency room. But I literally thought something was going to happen to me and I wasn't going to be here for my children. I said, well, at least they'll be okay. They'll be okay financially. There'll be plenty of money for them because I know how much insurance protection I have. So it's not just about just paying for final expenses. It's not just, let's pay for the funeral or whatever ceremonies we might have. It's also about, again, if you're no longer here, how is your family going to maintain themselves? It's so important to have this conversation because I'm pretty sure all of us and many of the podcast listeners could say, I know a family who didn't have any money and they struggled and they had to set up a GoFundMe and they lost the home and the kids couldn't go to college like they anticipated. That's called financial devastation when the breadwinner passes away. And even if you're not a breadwinner, let's say you're a stay-at-home mom, you're just important as well. Stay-at-home moms have like 5 different jobs. You're the chauffeur, you're the cook, you're the cleaner, you have so many jobs, you have a value to your family. And if you're no longer here, how's your family going to move on? And so it's really about leaving a legacy. When we think about I guess quote unquote rich people or wealthy people and generations of families who have money, a lot of times that money came through life insurance policies. A lot of people don't know that. You're literally talking about like the Rockefellers and the Charles Schwabs from, decades ago. They started with like significant life insurance policies that paid out generation to the next generation to the next generation. And I truly believe life insurance is the one of the only ways where you can turn pennies into multiple thousands of dollars. And it's not just through the demise of someone losing their life, but also so many, having living benefits. I can't tell you, so I'll tell you another quick story. I have a client my age and is 41, diagnosed with skin cancer, completely out the blue, had no clue what happened to it. But because of his life insurance policy that had living benefits and he had this cancer diagnosis, he was actually able to submit a claim to get several, multi thousands of dollars out of his policy to help him now while he's going through treatment, while he can't work. And that for me, I was like, oh my God, thank God we had that policy in place. So it's just beyond if I die or pass away. It's also like for me, I use a policy to save for my retirement, a way to have some cash when I get older in the future, for my children to have money when they go off to college. So it's we have to just kind of get it out of our heads of it's only, a means to an end. It can serve so many, it can solve really a lot of financial problems for you in one solution. So that's why I'm so passionate about it, and appreciate having a conversation to have it, because it does change lives. I've seen families where I've had to deliver a death benefit check. And if you think about the heartache and devastation of losing a loved one, but then here I'm able to give you a check for $100,000, $250,000. That helps that family so significantly, when they're dealing with the loss of that loved one. So I can go on and on and talking about the importance of it, but I hope I just encourage folks to be a little more educated about life insurance, that process, but also to think beyond, like, what else can this serve in my life and for my family?
That was very beautifully put. I feel very emotional right now. You just moved me completely. No, it's so important, like you said, to have it set up because, I'm glad that nothing was wrong that day you went to the hospital, but it very well, like, life happens and life is short. So, you know, for everyone out there who's listening, like, don't be like my dad, stressed out in a hospital bed, take care of yourself. My dad was very go, 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 and I am the same. And like I said, for me, that was an eye opener. Like, I need to wake up and input certain things to take care of myself because who's going to take care of my mom? Who's going to take care of my sister? Who's going to take care of my future children? Like, that definitely, it made me think differently. So thank you for making it a lot easier to take in because it is a very scary topic. And when I was just learning about it on my own, it was very overwhelming. And I didn't even get to the part of talking to agents yet because I was very overwhelmed of just looking at all the different options and how many people are nearby. And like, you do get a lot of mail and there's a lot on TV. So you really don't know, like, who can you trust? And that's part of it. It's like, now I know what to look out for, which thank you very much. But it's a very stressful process if you're walking into it fresh from a not so great emergency. So I definitely would do it when you're calm, and I would definitely find an agent that you can ask these questions about, someone that you can trust. And Chantay is an amazing listener. She's just the kindest, sweetest person ever, and I feel a lot better and more, like, I have a lot more knowledge on life insurance, and I know what questions to ask now than I did before this podcast. So if anyone has any questions, if anyone, would like to talk to Chantay on their own, please feel free to. She's an incredible listener. And I just want to thank you again for making it so easy. You outlined it perfectly and you made a very scary, uncomfortable situation, uncomfortable topic, very digestible and something that you could take into little bites at a time.
Thank you again so much, Chantay, for sharing your knowledge and for really adding that personal touch, for sharing your stories. Awista as well for sharing hers. Something I wanted to highlight that you had said earlier that really resonated with me is that certain people, when they come to kind of the table to discuss this idea, like I don't have any children of my own. So that's something, I'm not even married. So it's something that, like, before I might have been like, what am I going to really do with it? But then you think about, the communities that you love or causes that you love, or, even giving back to my mom who spent so long taking care of me. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be something that's, for, your immediate children or future children, like, whoever you care about, or a cause. And I thought that was really important to point out, because that's something that really resonated with me. Like, oh, that's right. Like I would have a need for this, if I went somewhere too. Like there's still, some good that could come of it, even if, I don't have my own children to bestow it on. So I really appreciated that you made that point, because it was like, oh, okay. Like that includes me too. That's nice. Um, did you have any final parting thoughts on life insurance before we close out the episode?
Yeah, my final thoughts are, don't be scared to have the conversation. It can be uncomfortable, like Alyssa said. Like it's not easy to talk about or think about this happening to you, but it happens. I think it was Benjamin Franklin who said two things are sure in life: taxes and death. Like you'll always pay taxes, and it will happen. And so my final thoughts is I just encourage folks to, find someone to have a conversation with to properly educate you. Myself, I'm licensed in 10 states across the country, so I'm happy to be a resource. I'm licensed down there in Florida as well. So if it's not me, anyone, reach out to find someone who can help you. And if I'm not licensed in your state, I can get it pretty quickly. But anyway, I just, I'm always happy to educate folks because it's something that we don't talk about, especially in our Native communities, because talking about death is often very taboo. But it happens all around us. It happens all the time, unfortunately, and we have to be prepared. Like if you're really wanting to maximize your financial situation, make all these good financial decisions, you cannot skip the conversation about life insurance. And like I said, at the end of the day, if you choose otherwise, that's totally your choice. You just know the decisions or the possible effects of that choice. But if more importantly, it's just important to have the conversation and see what makes sense for you. And for majority of the people, having some life insurance protection makes sense. Very few of us are self-insured. And self-insured means you have all this money just sitting around to just pay for all this stuff. Very, very few people are in that position. So I hope you walk away educated and empowered to at least look into it and see what makes sense for you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Chantay, for joining us today. And by the way, folks, we are going to have her contact info down in the episode description, so you can reach out to her. But that brings us to the end of the episode. As always, thanks for listening to the Hope Thing, a Native American podcast. If you enjoy our show, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and please also visit our website, nativelearningcenter.com, to find more information on our upcoming webinars and trainings. You guys can also contact our website with any episode ideas that you want to see us explore in the future. But until then, this is Brooke and Awista, and we hope to connect with you again really soon. Be sure to come back for more content.